All righty.
So, ladies and gentlemen, today I have the queen of Vedic Astrology, Jyotish, whom I'm going to hang out with literally in less than 2 weeks in Sedona. And she's got the most wonderful subject that I think everybody wants to know is how to find the character, the career of your spouse, their family, who they are, and she's going to show you something very, very interesting about this concept. So, Joni, welcome after a long time.
Thank you. Thank you. So I made some notes because, we kind of want step by step how to do things. And some of this is, so complicated that I made just really brief. I did this right before we're speaking right now, so it's probably not perfect, but I'll show you in my Word document
Okay.
once you share this. All the rules I came up with, and then I want to show you the 2 charts that exemplify what I'm talking about, such as Princess Diana. There's something very specific that I think you'll get out of this, showing her chart. And Brad Pitt, I wanted to show something in his chart, but just briefly because it's all about the Dashas in his chart. And then my son Austin, I wanted to show his chart in terms of meeting people, relationships, and when I predict he'll get married.
Okay. All right.
So let me share the screen here. And
is that your dog in the back?
Yes, that's a brand new dog. And I told Daniel to watch the dog while I was doing this. So you can see how well he's following.
Yeah.
You can see how he's following the rules.
Yeah.
But okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Here are the rules I just created, how to predict marriage and relationships. So first thing I want to say is people are always like, when am I going to get married? You're looking at the chart, but here it's a process. Many times, you can predict when you meet someone, but it may not be the time you actually marry. And sometimes it's more grandiose when you meet someone because that's the joyful time and the happiness. And then there's engagement, then there's marriage, and many times you can also see when children will arrive after that. It's almost like a whole process you got to realize in astrology. So these are all of the things that I look for when I'm looking for marriage. The first thing is the rules. Of course, you got to look at Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet that gives opportunities. And when it's aspecting the 7th house or the 7th house ruler, first I'm just going to go through the rules, and then I'll prove my point through the chart. Then, in Vedic astrology, we say that whenever you have both Jupiter and Saturn aspecting the 7th house, or any of the houses, right? It's a point of manifestation. Saturn gives the discipline and the focus, and Jupiter gives the opportunities. So in Vedic astrology, we like to see when both Jupiter and Saturn are aspecting a house to produce results. And of course, we're looking at the 7th house for marriage and relationships. But don't forget the 5th house is the house of dating and love and opening the heart. And sometimes you've got to have these aspects to the 5th and then the 7th. But the best case scenario is what we're going to find is the 11th house or the 1st house, because the 11th house aspects the 5th house, and we're talking about Jupiter or Saturn if they're in the 11th. But if you have Jupiter in the 11th or in the 1st, it's aspecting by trine or opposition the 5th house as well. So those are the houses that really create a relationship when you have transiting Jupiter. Okay. So another thing is Venus aspecting the 7th house or the 7th house ruler. And here's my rule of thumb. If you have 3 of these things going on, you can call it a prediction. 1 or 2, it may not happen. But when you have 3 of these variables, and I'm giving you more than 3 things, but when you have 3, then you're going to have a hit and the event can happen. And of course, this will apply to all the houses, but we're looking at marriage in this case. So for a man's chart, Venus is very important. But here in the West, Mars and Jupiter are very important. Mars, remember, is the planet of passion. and Venus is love. So not only does Venus just relate to men and the marriage partner, the wife, Venus can represent relationships in a woman's chart as well. And Mars for a woman, I mean, look at their symbols when you use their symbols, and I love to use the symbols, the glyphs, that is, in astrology, because I believe that the symbols activate your subconscious. I tell all my students, you have to use the glyphs because they do trigger the subconscious and the intuitive powers. But if you look at the symbol for Venus, it's a woman. The symbol for Mars, it's a man, right?
Yeah.
So Mars is passion, Venus is love. So the other thing I look at besides the 7th house and the 7th house ruler is the Dara Karaka. And this is part of Jyotish astrology, where it's the planet that is the lowest in sidereal degree. It will represent relationships. So when you have these planets aspecting the Dara Karaka, Venus or Jupiter, that's a hit. That will equate to one of the 3 hits that you need, at least 3 to make a solid prediction. So the Dara Karaka, of course, does not include the outer planets or Rahu or Ketu in my book. I know some people do use Rahu and Ketu in the lineup of the Karakas, but that's just the way I do it. So Rahu and Ketu, these are really important transits, because wherever Rahu and Ketu are going to be where the eclipses are occurring. And eclipses are the point of the biggest change that you're going through for that year and a half that you have either Rahu or Ketu in a sign. So always look at where the eclipses are falling. And as I said before, Jupiter in the 11th is best because it opposes the 5th, which is love and romance, and Jupiter in the 1st aspects the 5th house. Okay, here is a biggie. When Jupiter conjuncts or opposes the moon, you are really prone to meeting someone and falling in love. Don't ever forget to look at Chandra Lagna, because we know the transits are so important from the moon. But first, that's probably one of the biggest ones. So Jupiter conjunct or oppose the moon. And even when you look at Chandra Lagna, when you look at the sign that is opposed the moon, the natal moon, that sign is on the 7th house. And that planet, if it's being aspected by Jupiter or Rahu or Ketu, that's another big plus, and that can represent relationships. So here's another thing, the dashas. If you find a chart, and that's why we're going to look at Brad Pitt's chart for just a moment, but if you find a chart where there's many planets in opposition, they're going to have many relationships, because when they go into the dasha, the Mahadasha and the Bhukti of 2 planets that are opposed to each other, they will either bring in a relationship or break it up. So if they go into a Mahadasha and the planet that the Bhukti ruling planet that is opposite the Mahadasha ruling planet, if it is a natural benefic, it will bring a relationship into their life. If it is a natural malefic, it can break up a relationship. And I many times go through the dashas in a chart and I go, did you meet someone at this time? And they go, oh yes. And then, when they go into the dasha of Rahu Mars, and Mars is opposite Rahu, that's when they break up. And you can really pinpoint those years. So do you get that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
All right. The Navamsa, I mean, that is, there's a reason why when we pull up the Navamsa chart, it has in parentheses spouse. And that's because it does relate to the spouse in a chart. So it tells the whole Navamsa really can give an understanding of your relationships, because we have to consider relationships are a major focal point of our life. It really does bring us, happiness, family, relations. It's very important. And the Navamsa will be a key indicator as to, what is going to be our life going to be like with a partner. So the Dasha, and I believe the divisional charts are so useful, particularly by looking at the dashas. So is the dasha ruler, Mahadasha or Bhukti, in the 7th house or the 1st house of the Navamsa? That can bring in a relationship as well. Okay? Now, Venus retrograde. I bet you didn't know the importance of this. It marks the spot for the year to come. The stationing degrees are the major indicators. So if you have, Venus just went direct, and I believe, the degrees that Venus was when it turned retrograde or when it turned direct. Those degrees are extremely powerful. Mark them in any chart you look at because they will bring a relationship, definitely. And we will prove this point with Princess Diana. Now, the KP system, really and truly, the KP system is looking at the trinal aspects, because when you look at planets that are in the nakshatras that are ruled by the same planet, they will always be in a trine to each other. So this brings the concept of the trine forth with planets. Now, if you've ever noticed, if you have a planet that's exactly trine in your birth chart, notice it's always conjunct in the Navamsa. This is important to understand the concept between the trinal aspect and the nakshatras. So, if you have a planet in Ashwini, and you also have a planet in Magha, they're both ruled by Ketu, and they're probably going to be trying each other. Okay? So you will find this is so useful in relationships. And so it really does, and that's a KP system that you're looking at this, but just in case people don't know what I mean by that Krishnamurti system, we're just looking at the trines, not only of Jupiter, and I also use the trinal aspect of Rahu and Ketu as a full aspect. Some people do, some people don't. I do. But all the trines are relative and important in this respect. So it will activate events. So to see the marriage partner, now here's another concept. Aside from, many people always ask me, well, will you describe who I'm going to marry? What are they like? Here's what you do, and I'm sure you've done this many times.
All the time, yeah.
Make the 7th house the 1st house and read it as though it were their chart, and even include the transits. It tells you everything. For example, the 8th house of your chart will describe the wealth and money of your partner. Why? Because it's the 2nd from the 7th. And a lot of women are like, oh, well, am I going to marry somebody wealthy? Well, if I see Jupiter Rahu maybe in the 8th house, that would mean the 2nd house from the 7th, and they can be very wealthy. Okay. So then I'm looking at how the 7th house it's all about your relationship. Now, here's another thing that I'm asked quite frequently. I'm on my 2nd marriage. How can my 7th house relate to my 2nd marriage partner? Because they're so different than my 1st marriage partner. So I always say the 7th house is always going to be how you relate.
Yeah.
How we relate and the kind of people that we're attracted or drawn to. But I really think, and this has been my experience, that the 2nd marriage partner would be the 9th, the 3rd marriage partner would be the 11th. So what you do is you just start counting 3 houses from the last one to reference the new marriage partner. If it's the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, I mean, Elizabeth Taylor, you'd be going all the way around the chart. She was married 7 times, right? So that's how I see it. Now, I've noticed some people, I've researched this, say the 2nd house is the 2nd marriage partner because it's the 8th from the 7th. But I didn't get good results from that. I really do think you continually take 3 houses to represent that different marriage.
Why is that? Because won't the 9th house represent the sibling of the...
Yeah, I don't know. It just works the 3. Because, actually, Kapiel, this is a concept from Western astrology, and I tested it out because I thought just like you, it's the third house. How are they brothers or sisters to? I don't know, but the 3 just really works. Okay. Try it out. You know, don't take my word for it. Try it out and see if you know, when you start to describe the second or third marriage partner, if it doesn't work, it works. Okay. That's my experience. So I thought that was an interesting concept you might enjoy. And let's see, then the Navamsa will tell, of course, of the second part of life. So, so it really does depict our relationships and happiness through marriage in the second part of life. Another thing that of course I always notice, if Mars is aspecting the 7th house, either in the Navamsa or in the birth chart, because it's called Kuja dosha, and it does represent difficult relationships. And that doesn't mean that somebody is not to have happiness in relationships. In my opinion, it's just that people have certain karmas that they have to go through, and through healing it, which is what we're all here to do, we can have healthy, good relationships. But of course, looking at the chart is how we get the meaning of what we're here to grow and learn through karmically, especially through relationships.
It's like old married couple with Mars aspecting the 7th house.
Yeah.
They'll fight, they'll bicker, but they can't live without each other.
Yeah. And you know what? Saturn also can represent people that go for longevity in a relationship. Not always. It just really depends. But Saturn can give longevity to relationships. And also, when I look at the synastry compatibility of a chart, you always need Saturn aspects to make a relationship last. Okay. So transits. Oh, and here's another thing that I thought I might throw in. It's very interesting. If you have some major configurations throughout the year, you're going to know that all of your clients with certain ascendants will have difficulty in their relationships. And sometimes I use this to rectify a chart. If it's like between 2 ascendants, I can figure it out based on these transits. And for one, this year, because of the summer where we had Mars go retrograde, and it was in the sign of Capricorn, for 6 months with K2, if you have Cancer, Capricorn as an ascendant, there's difficulty pertaining to relationships. It's just, you know, every single client I had this, and I could always, you know, say, have you been having trouble in your relationship? And they go, oh my God, you wouldn't believe. So, you know, this works. And another time that I used to use to rectify was around April of 2002. Saturn, Rahu, and Mars were in Taurus. And a couple of times I remember I was trying to figure out if they were Sagittarius or Scorpio ascendant. And I said, did you have great difficulty in your marriage around, you know, the spring of 2002? And they said yes. So I said, okay, then you're ascendant Scorpio, because that means that that these planets that were in Taurus, which was Saturn, Rahu, Mars in Taurus, that if they had Scorpio ascendant, that all of that would have been in their 7th house. So I would know that their ascendant would be Scorpio and not Sagittarius. So these are just interesting little side notes I thought you might add. Okay, now another one. Always, always, if you're in question whether or not the results Jupiter is going to bring when it's transiting the 7th house, or if it's aspecting the 7th house, go back 12 years ago, the last time it was there. Did it produce a relationship? If it did, you can really, you know, make this prediction, because the last time it was there, it will, you know, it will give similar results, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so Mars Dasha can bring passion. And I find many times, and it also goes for women as well, but particularly for men, when they go into Venus Rahu or Rahu Venus's Dasha, that love will come into their life during that Dasha. Okay.
I've heard that.
So regardless of where they're placed, that's just a key. okay? But for women, Jupiter can be the karaka for marriage as well. And I wonder sometimes, this is my thought process. It could be wrong, but I think because of arranged marriages in India, that they look at Jupiter possibly for the marriage partner, because when they're arranging a marriage, they want someone that can protect and take care of the woman or the daughter.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why Jupiter is a karaka for women. But I do find that Mars works as well. So be aware of that.
Okay.
So Venus is the general karaka for relationships all around. And Jupiter's Dasha for women will bring children. I mean, the minute sometimes a woman goes into Jupiter's Mahadasha, if she's around childbearing years, she'll get pregnant. She'll start to have a family. So the other thing is, we won't get into this today, but I just wanted you to see this. Compatibility of charts is when you overlay both charts with each other, you know, put one person's planets in the other person's chart, and vice versa. You can see how people relate, if they're going to work out well together. And like I said, in this instance, we need Saturn's transits, because, I mean, Saturn connections, not transits. You know, in other words, one person's Saturn connects to the other person's planets for a relationship to last. And of course, K2 can be past life connections. Rahu is some kind of destiny or karma that you have together to share. So that's all in part of synastry. So with all those rules thrown at you, let's look at a couple of charts to check out my theories.
Yeah.
So let me pull up Rashra's Allied here. And Brad Pitt, can you see the chart well?
Yes.
I know you don't like the South Indian style, but I will explain clearly, and you'll see why I want it, at least for this chart, because it was around 1997, Brad Pitt, all the way through to 2003, that he went through one relationship after another. It was first, you know, Gwyneth Paltrow. Then he went to, what was her name? Jennifer Aniston.
Yep.
And then the last one that he just broke up with was, what was her name?
Angelina Jolie.
Thank you. Angelina Jolie. So during that time, whoops, this thing kind of has a mind of its own. He was in the last part of Rahu. And if you'll notice from Rahu, look at all the planets that go 7.
Yeah.
So, you know, from one to another, and up here, let's see. This kind of ran through this. But you can see that during that period from 1997 to 2003, he went into on and off, first Rahu, Venus, but that, remember I said regardless where it's placed, that will bring relationships, but Rahu Sun, opposite.
Yeah.
Then Rahu Moon, you know, ended one, began another, and then Rahu Mars ended one. And then he went into Jupiter in 2003, and they started adopting babies, Angelina Jolie and him. So I thought that was really significant, just to prove that point. So that's all I really wanted to show you from his chart, okay? And when you see charts with a lot of planets oppose the Mahadasha, when they go into that bhukti, it'll either bring a relationship if it's a natural benefic, or end a relationship if it's a natural malefic. Okay, all right. So the next thing is Princess Diana. And she was married. See, over here is what I do. Over here is I pull up all the transits for particular dates. Do you know how to do all that in here?
No.
I will show you how to do that at the conference, okay? We don't have time today. But it's really cool because you can put in edit, you can put in, when I'm rectifying charts, I'll have about 10 different events. See, when you click on this, you'll over here, I have her death and her marriage, you know, different things. And these are where all the planets were specifically on that day, okay? So she was married July 29th, 1981, okay? And like I said, marriage is a process. It's not just that, you know, you're pinpointing the marriage date, but when you first meet. And you see, on the day that she got married, whoops, little bugs here, Jupiter and Saturn were in Virgo, very tight together, 12 and 11 degrees. So they were here in the 11th house. Now, Jupiter was aspecting the 7th house, and it was aspecting Venus, ruler of the 7th house. Remember, we look at the whole sign as an aspect. But before this happened, the year before, when they met and they became engaged, Jupiter was in Leo. And notice that it was 7th from the moon.
Yeah.
And then it was with Mars, right? Remember I said that's passion, relationships for a woman, and Rahu. So there was a lot going on, but most significantly, it was 7th from the moon when the meeting and the engagement and everything occurred. So then in the process, Jupiter went into the 11th, where it's aspecting the 5th house, which is the house of love, romance, the heart. And if you'll notice, the 5th house is Pisces. So when a planet aspects a house that it rules, it empowers that house for whatever it's good for.
Yeah.
Yes, so there's love. And of course, it's aspecting the 7th. Now, generally, I like to see Saturn aspecting the 7th as well. It was aspecting the 7th when they became engaged and they met by its 10th aspect. Okay, got it.
Did Diana ever dealt with any miscarriages or abortion?
You know, I don't know.
Or her mother? Okay.
I don't know that, but I do know that right after she got married, she started having kids. And look at her Dasha right there.
Yeah.
In 1982, they were married in 81. She went into Jupiter's Mahadasha.
Jupiter, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So she was in Rahu Mars in 81. And really, it was around right before that Jupiter was here activating Rahu Mars, okay? And, you know, to be honest with you, the Navamsa doesn't fit as well as some charts do. I really rely on the transits when I'm making these kind of predictions. I always look at the Navamsa. Sometimes it makes total sense. Sometimes you'll see more things in the transits. But notice this combination in the 1st house in her Navamsa, which clearly defines her marriage with her husband, which the ruler of the 7th, which is the sun, ruling Leo, goes to the 1st, and it's with Saturn in its own sign. And I do use the outer planets, forgive me. But Neptune represents misunderstandings big time. Mm-hmm. So this to me describes, you know, the problem she had in her relationships, in her marriage, in the 2nd part of life when she was married. Yeah. So this is significant. And who knows about her death and everything too, with Neptune being there. We won't get into that.
And then let's say if you wanted to see who Diana is going to be with, then you'll just look at the 7th house, making it the Kritika Nakshatra or Scorpio. Okay. Yeah,
so this would be his chart, Taurus ascendant, and, you know, Sun, Mercury in the 2nd house, Mercury in its own sign. My goodness, I mean.
Oh, Mars, Rahu in the 10th house of Magha. Regal, royal.
Yes, I mean, and that's his 4th house, her marriage partner, which does represent, you know, his mother, the Queen of England, and all of this. You know, all of this is so clear. It's so interesting. And, you know, even looking at this going to the 9th, and here, look at the moon K2 in the 10th house from the 7th. So it's talking about Prince Charles. But for her, all of this, you know, opposition is between the 10th and the 4th. Mm-hmm. So here's where what I wanted to point out in this chart that's significant. The summer before she got married in 1980, Venus went retrograde in Taurus in her 7th house. And I know everybody's afraid of Venus retrograde in terms of relationships, but I find it brings in a relationship. I do. So so anyone that had like Scorpio or Taurus as their ascendant that year, with Venus being in the 7th house, brought in the potential for marriage and relationships. And you know, with this last Venus retrograde that just went direct, think about the signs of Libra and Aries. It brings in relationships, okay? So I make those points where planets station as major indicators for events in the future. So that's the main thing I wanted to bring out. Okay. Now, if you'll notice, the day that she got married, Venus was at 12 degrees of Leo, which is 7th from the moon, and it was conjunct Mars right here. So that's another key indicator. But most of all, Jupiter, I think, in the whole process was 7th from the moon when they were dating, and then the whole process of Jupiter coming into the 11th and aspecting not only Venus, but Venus is the 7th house, plus the ruler of the 7th house, plus the Dara Karaka. Look at that. See down there?
Yeah.
I have the Jaimini Karakas lined up here. So this is what I wanted to show you with this chart. Another thing that was happening is K2, if you look down here, Rahu and K2 are at 8 Cancer Capricorn. So K2 was in Capricorn, actually where they are right now. And K2 is aspecting Venus, which is very karmic relationship that occurred at that time. Okay, so now I want to show you the chart that I think is going to really give, I mean, I think everything I've been showing you, Kapiel, you already know about. Yeah. But this next little rule of thumb, I think you're going to enjoy, and you can let me know if you knew about it. But sure. Here is my youngest son, Austin's chart. So Austin just met a girl this summer that he is head over heels for, okay? And he's very picky. He has not been in a relationship for a really long time. So every month, Austin has me read his chart, Mom, and he sits there with his phone and he puts all the dates and the times from everything I predict. And he just wants me to go month by month.
Yeah.
But he wants all the details. So he is he's constantly having me look at his chart. He knows this works, right? So I gave him some dates for when I thought he was going to meet someone. And I told him, I even described her in some way. And he just kind of like, I said, she'll be older than you. And he says, no way, no way. Well, way. So anyway, I gave him a particular date, and that date, he met her, and they were so head over heels over each other that he actually showed her his phone that his mother predicted that he would meet someone that day.
Oh, wow.
So that's really cute. So let me show you what I find happening in his chart. I think you'll find it fascinating. So,
is she in healthcare, or is she
what?
Is she in healthcare, or
she actually she is into medicine in a sense and healing, so you got that right on. But you know what's really interesting? She's into like dealing with horses her whole life, dealing with horses.
I saw that.
And veterinarian stuff with animals.
Yeah.
Notice his Venus in Ashwini.
Yep, exactly. That's what I saw. That's what I saw.
Okay, so you're keying into that Ashwini as well, right? Yep. Good. That's incredible. So
he probably loves growing herbs too, planting and gardening and
yes. So anyway, this girl, I mean, they met, and here's right here, I have meeting. Here is the transits on June 8th, 2018. This is when they met. Okay. And let me show you why I chose this day ahead of time, why I predicted this. Because, well, first of all, his Saturn, ruler of the 7th and the 7th at 29 degrees. I told him, you know, when Jupiter being in Libra is aspecting the 7th house that they would meet while Jupiter's in Libra, correct?
Yeah.
Well, not only that, Saturn's in Sagittarius during this time. So Saturn by its 3rd full aspect is aspecting the 7th, and Jupiter by its trinal aspect is aspecting the 7th. So this is a serious relationship. It's not just 5th house stuff.
What date he met her?
Do what?
What date did he meet her?
June 8th. This
Okay. June 8th, right?
Yep. Okay.
Look at the degree of Venus.
Exactly. That's where
I taught this in my school as well to my students.
You are so on it. So Venus was 29 degrees of Gemini, right? It's here in the 11th. The 11th house, for some reason, has a lot to do with relationships.
Well, yes, the desire of, it's the highest of desire, which is always has been relationships for everybody. Oh, I want that girlfriend. I want that boyfriend, you know?
I know. It's all about relationships. I think it's because of the Kama houses.
Yeah.
You know, 3, 7, and 11.
It's 5th from the 7th house, so the romance of the partner.
Exactly.
You know?
You got it.
Yeah.
So not only was Venus trining Saturn, and then this takes up the KP system, but notice it's 7th from the moon at the same time.
Yes. That's right.
I thought that was so cool. So I said, you know, this is the day you'll meet someone, and I'll be darned if he didn't. So another thing that's going on during this day is also K2 is in Capricorn here, and let me see.
Did he meet her while he was traveling or at a religious spiritual ceremony, something of that sort?
No, he was here. He was at, you know, I think at work. One of his coworkers, you know, he had this food truck, thought that they would like each other, so she brought him to. Her friend brought her to meet him because she thought that they would make a cute couple, and they immediately locked eyes, and it was it.
Wow.
I know. So that's pretty amazing. So also remember that Venus going retrograde here in Libra, it's important because Venus was aspecting Venus, and even if you look at the trinal aspect, was aspecting the 7th house. But one more thing that maybe you may not have seen that I thought was a big reference is if you look here at Uranus, is at 7 degrees of Aries, right here on Venus. And that's like unexpected chance meeting, because Venus is love and romance, particularly for a guy's chart. So Uranus being here, but specifically, you know, that Venus, if you'll notice on this day over here, you know, Venus at 29 degrees of Gemini, Purnavasu is ruled by Jupiter. And if you'll look at Jupiter, it is in Vishaka, which is ruled by Jupiter. So you see both Venus and Jupiter are in the Jupiter-ruled nakshatras that aligns with Saturn. Natal Saturn is in Purva Bhadrapada, which is ruled by Jupiter. And that was another indication of why I thought that trinal aspect of Venus with Saturn, but then again, the nakshatra rulers transiting Jupiter here in Libra was trining Saturn as well. So you see you have this grand trine with transiting Venus, Jupiter to Saturn, ruler of the 7th and the 7th. And of course, that's why I said she would be older than him. Of course, she's only 1 year older, but when you're 23 and she's 24, it's a big deal at their age.
Yeah.
Not to us.
Well, my wife is older than me, so yeah.
Okay, so that was what I saw here. Now, the next thing is I want to make a prediction for when I think he'll get married. Okay. So looking at the dashas, I think he'll get married here in Rahu Saturn.
Yes, that's the one. Rahu Saturn always automatically brings in marriage.
Yep. And not only that, notice his Saturn is ruler of the 7th and the 7th, right? Yeah. Okay, so the year of 2022 to 2025. But I think it will probably be the year of, let's see, where did I put it? 2023. And here's why. Because he will be in Rahu Saturn. And what I find is that transiting Saturn will be in his 7th house, because Saturn's a major issue for relationships for him, because it's a ruler of the 7th and the 7th.
Yeah.
So transiting Saturn will be in Aquarius by then.
Yeah.
And transiting Jupiter will be on Venus, will be in Aries for him. Okay, so that's another key indicator. And it will be aspecting his natal moon by that time. But going to the Navamsa chart, notice that he has Saturn ruling the 7th house. Again, so I know that he's going to probably marry in Rahu Saturn in that window of time. But the year of 2022, Saturn is still in Capricorn. I think we need transiting Saturn in Aquarius for it to occur.
And definitely they have a very strong past life connection too. Probably that's why they instantly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah. So do you want to comment about anything else? That's basically.
No, I totally get that. Yeah.
No, that's everything I wanted to explain. I laid out all the rules, and these are, but you know what? All of those rules, nothing is like a cookie cutter concept. You'll always find different combinations of things occurring, but you kind of need 3 of those things to be able to make a prediction.
Is her mother like a very powerful person, like somebody in government?
Her mother. So you're seeing this going to the 4th house.
Yeah. Or a teacher.
You know, she is, but I don't think it's like in the sense of career or all those type of things.
Okay.
But I definitely, I met her mother, and she is definitely the one who is the lead in their relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything else you want to say about this? And we'll go back, leave sharing the screen, and we can look at each other again.
No. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so let me stop the share. And what other questions do you have for me?
One thing I would ask you is, so like in order for somebody to look at their father-in-law, mother-in-law, siblings, you're simply making 7th house the ascendant, and the 3rd house from there then becomes the siblings, the 10th house, the mother-in-law.
Right. Yeah, I look at all of that. And of course, when I look at somebody's 4th house, consider it's going to be the husband's career. So whether or not, they're going to be powerful or successful in their work or career, you can see it.
Exactly.
All charts are interrelated. I think it's so fascinating. You can even look at, siblings in this way, or the parents, the mother, making the 4th house. I always tell my students, look at the 11th house. If you see major malefics in the 11th house, that represents the 8th from the 4th, and that the mother had a really difficult life. One time, in a chart, I was looking at Mars Rahu in the 11th house, and represented a really difficult relationship for the mother. And actually, it was the charts of, I used this chart in my book to show Babat Babam and house from house to house, because one of the Gallo brothers had Mars Rahu in their 11th house. And it turns out that the father killed the mother and then killed himself in front of them. And I thought, how is this in the chart? How could this be? Because I couldn't see it. Yeah. And then finally, when I saw Mars Rahu in the 11th, that's where I realized the 11th house deals with being the 8th from the 4th. Plus, it is the house that they deem as adoption, because it's the end of the mother, you see?
That's right. So, like in his case, is father like an entrepreneur, or somebody who's very good with communications and sales?
Who are you talking about?
Austin's girlfriend's father.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And he does do that. You're right.
Because that's a Rahu in the 3rd and Swati. So I'm like,
I love that.
So it's working.
I know. So isn't it interesting how we're all interrelated and you think, oh, this has to be karmic.
Exactly.
And you can see, families all interrelated with each other through, turning the chart to the different houses as the first.
And I actually forgot to ask you. I didn't even look it on the website yet. Are you teaching at the Sedona conference?
Oh, yeah.
What are you teaching there? What's up?
Okay, I'm doing an all-day workshop on chart interpretation.
Oh.
Basically, I'm going to give all my secrets of specific things that I've discovered throughout the years that I feel like nobody ever taught us. It's not in the books.
Yeah.
For example, planets in the 11th house, how it can deal with the loss of the mother.
Yeah.
Or, all the different houses, how they relate. But I have all sorts of interesting, here's another one. Rahu and Jupiter, when they're trying to each other, you can see specific things. So I'm doing that all-day workshop. And then I'm doing a class on the future of the economy, cryptocurrency, and the stock market, because I have some real specific ways to make these predictions looking at particular stocks in the stock market. I've done this for many, many, many years, and I know that I've been making some major predictions about oil this year and next year. And yeah, oil prices just dropped, but they are going to go up. And I proved my point through looking at the charts and the first trade charts of Exxon Oil and a couple of the oil companies. You can see very clearly the cycles of transits in these first trade charts for companies. And I also do the same thing with cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and Ethereum and XRP. So that's going to be my talk, talking about prediction in the economy, which I believe, just to give you a little heads up, that everything will be volatile up and down until we get to when Rahu and Ketu shift signs, which will be, of course, next March and April of 2019. Then you're going to see a dramatic change in the economy and a downward cycle. So we've got time to plan all this.
Perfect.
So that's my two talks, and I am really looking forward to seeing you there.
Yes.
We've not been able to connect and, just...
Last time was pretty much in Sedona, too.
Do what?
Last time we connected was pretty much last year Sedona.
I know. We've been too busy. Yeah. Our lives have been crazy, and I've been traveling.
Yeah, I get it.
I just got back from a Mediterranean cruise. I told you.
Look at you.
My husband surprised me. I had no idea I was even going out of the country till I was at the airport. He told me what to pack, but my God, what a surprise. That was just the most amazing thing. When
are you guys arriving in Sedona? What date?
I'm arriving the 29th.
Okay, it's the same as me. Yeah.
So all right. I'll be there I'll be sometime in the day of the 29th.
Okay. All right. We'll see you probably at the same time then.
Yeah, so we got to look for each other. Okay?
Thank you, Joni. Yeah, we'll see you in the bar.
All right. I'll see you there.
I know. Okay, bye.
Such a pleasure always.
Same here.